Welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, a global movement for generational healing. Today, we are going to be sharing some beautiful wisdom and knowledge on a very sacred week. Elvira and I are excited to honor our ancestors, our past generations during the week where in Mexico, a lot of people celebrate what is known as Dia De Los Muertos, which is not a festival where people just dress up like Halloween. It is deeper than that. It is the rituals and the ancestral beautiful traditions that continue to be passed down, that once we actually learn to honor, we can actually bring the healing circle fully home. So we're going to be exploring how this ancient celebration, especially honored specifically from our specific ancestors, in my situation, the Purepecha people from Michoacan, to look at the lineage, to look at the ritual and what it means on a deeper meaning, and why, in the end, generational healing has to come back to that connection with our ancestors. So, how are you, Elvira? Happy and blessed, beautiful, whatever day we're listening to this on.
I'm doing good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is a very beautiful week. For me, the Dia de los Muertos is more important than even Christmas. And it wasn't always like this. I definitely, growing up in the United States of America, it's very easy to forget your lineage, your rituals, the ancestors, and how they celebrated these sacred holidays because you kind of just blend into the way of the United States culture. But once I began my healing journey, is when I actually started to make these connections, and I realized how important it was for me to reconnect with the ancestors, but also how it was done on purpose, which I want to bring up and talk about today, for us to forget our roots and for us to think our ancestors were just these savages who didn't know what they were doing. They were so behind times. And yet now, I don't know about you, but I've seen this incredible growth in the celebration of Dia de los Muertos, where I feel like even nowadays in the United States, it's become like a staple celebration. What do you think?
Honestly, I didn't grow up with this tradition. I don't know if my family just, like you said, they came to the United States and they just kind of let it go, or they just really didn't do it. But as I got older, I realized myself, around the same time, the healing journey, where I'm like, I need to celebrate my ancestors and honor them for whatever they've been contributing to our lineage, whether it be good or bad, one way or another, they're teaching us something.
Right. That's a good point, right? Because they don't just leave us trauma. There's also a lot of great things that they teach you. And learning how to be neutral about that, of course, takes nervous system regulation and brain rewiring. But in the end, there was one book that really made a difference for me. And believe it or not, it didn't even come from my tradition or from my ancestors. It was actually this teacher, Shogam Trungpa, who is he was an exiled monk from Nepal who they were chasing after because he was teaching very sacred teachings in India and Nepal. And he ended up coming to the United States of America, and he founded a university called Naropa, which my son attended for about a year. And in his book, The Sacred Path of the Warrior, there's a whole section about how it is important for us to remember where we came from and to make peace from wherever it is that we came from, because otherwise we can't fully heal. And I thought that was so important, especially myself, because my healing journey was nothing normal or what my ancestors followed. In fact, I was following traditions that they probably would never even entertain, or that maybe they would even judge. And I'm talking about like Kundalini yoga. It's not like my past ancestors, like the Purepecha. Absolutely, I believe the Mexicas and the Mayans practice, but I'm talking about like my grandma and my great grandma. To them, especially based on the Bible, like yoga and meditation. Even though it says it in there that Christ came to teach yoga and meditation, they can't understand it. They would see that as something demonic. So when I heard that of what Chogam Trungpa said, I said, "Wow! Not only am I integrating these new rituals and technologies, because that's how I see Kundalini yoga, but I'm also needing to make sure that I don't forget where I came from. And I think it was done on purpose, especially for us immigrant people to forget where we come from as a way for us to continue to and the generational trauma pattern. And I think about the Native Americans, for example, here in the United States, who literally these children from Native American families, they were taken from their families, taken to what they called schools, correctional schools, where they literally were told they could not practice their spiritual traditions. If they spoke their language, they would get a pen or pencil and they would stab it in their tongues, and they would basically cut their hair, which to Purepecha people and Native American people, the hair is a very sacred aspect of who they are. So it almost feels like on purpose we were kept away from these traditions and our ancestors so that we really don't bring the healing fully home. Do you feel that there was some kind of program within you, or it was just something that because your parents didn't honor it? Because I know my parents didn't, because they were not really taught as much as we are now. Or was it, or do you feel that it kind of just happened naturally where we all forgot our roots?
I think it just happened naturally. Both of my parents are very prideful where they come from, where they were born in Mexico, to the point where they kind of argue with them each other of who's better, which I think is ridiculous. It's something that I've always hated about how they're always fighting about who, what state they're from in Mexico. But when they moved here, my both of my parents have always been very fluent in Spanish. So since I was little, I had to read and learn how to speak Spanish. They wouldn't speak to us in English. But for whatever reason, I think it just wasn't practiced, like in regards to like the Dia de los Muertos. There were certain other traditions that they kept, but that wasn't something I ever saw growing up.
Yeah, I think me growing up, no, but my mom did practice it when she was growing up and when my dad was growing up, because it was very important. It was a staple. Actually, my aunt, who's already transitioned, this celebration was very important to her. And a lot of it, I think now, I think when my mom's generation, when me growing up, it's like her, she was so afraid of death that she doesn't want us to even be around that subject matter. It was almost like her way of protecting. Even though, like I said, my grandma, my tia was very, very ritualistic around this time. She would cook for the rancho, they would have big celebrations. And right now in Mexico, it's so beautiful. There's a small chance I could still be there for Dia de los Muertos. Every year we went, the first time we ever went for Dia de los Muertos was actually 4 years ago. We went to San Miguel de Allende, which is oh my God, one of the most beautiful celebrations, but that's not the root. The root where it started is Pátzcuaro in Michoacán. My parents are in Michoacán right now. So there's a couple of things that my husband is trying to finish so we can try to get out of here so we can go, because that's been my ultimate dream, to actually be there when it's happening and where I came from, which for me again is Michoacán, and Pátzcuaro is the actual origins. This is where the movie Coco got famous from, that Disney movie. So my mom, I believe, stopped celebrating it because she was so afraid of death. She had so many, her aunt, my aunt, the one that celebrated in such a big way, she transitioned. So to her, death became a taboo, which is really sad, because when my aunt died, I was only 8 years old, and I got really afraid of death because my mom went through so much depression that she couldn't explain to me, that she couldn't be there for me, that she couldn't hold space with the young girl who had a lot of questions. So death always became something that was very scary for me. And now that I know my birth chart astrologically, I have a lot of Scorpio energy, which is the 12th house energy, which is about death and the taboo. And now I understand why I've always been someone who wanted answers, especially about death. And I feel really blessed because Kundalini Yoga came into my life. And as in my certification to become a therapist, one of the first classes I ever took was on death and the journey of the soul. And I thought to myself, and I took it last year during October, during Dia de los Muertos, and I thought this is the peace that I always was seeking, because it wasn't just explained from Kundalini Yoga therapy, it was also explained to me from the traditions of the Purepecha. And even like the movie Coco, it is a good representation of how we see the, not 100% accurate, but there's a lot of representation of how we should all see death, which is really not the end, it's the beginning. And the fact
Yeah.
that we can actually still communicate with our ancestors. So I started doing my altar. First, I went to San Miguel de Allende in 2018, and then that's when my altar, I kept it up all year. I used to put it up and take it down, put it up and take it down. Now I keep it up all year, and I actually do a special celebration and decoration on El Dia de los Muertos. But it's something that for me has really opened the conversation between me and my children. Because when we went to Dia de los Muertos together, we all went, my two sons and my husband, we had to talk about this taboo subject. We had to talk about death. It brought up all of these emotions in us that I felt was such a reward and a gift, because being able to talk to them about it made them less scared, made them understand that when people do transition, that we do not lose them, that we can always communicate with them.
Oh, yes.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fear that people have around death, or do you really, or what do you think, or maybe for you, how did that show up?
I think I started seeing my mom when when her mom passed away, my abuelita passed away. She started putting it, Dia de Muertos, she would put her picture, buy her flowers, do the candle, bring her coffee because she loved her coffee. But I think honestly it came to me even not specifically on the Day of the Dead, but it was because I lost a sister, baby sister that came after me. She was stillborn. I was 5 years old when she was born, stillborn. And that always affected me because I was waiting for her. I always wanted a sister and I was waiting for her. So when she passed, it was actually kind of shocking because I don't remember her face, but it was just weird how they I did see her. They did show her to us. It's crazy how there was like this glass in the hospital. And my dad's like, "You want to go see your sister?" And I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "But how?" Like she's guys like, "Well, we go see her." I'm 5 years old. We're behind this wall that has a glass window. They take her, open the drawer, take her out, and they just showed her to us. And I will always remember my dad holding me in his arms. And I looked at her. I just don't remember her face. I don't remember what she looked like. But that was my first encounter with death. And I always had this strong connection with her, always. My younger sister, I'm 7 years older than her. And she's like, "I've never had that connection with Susan." And I'm like, "Because you weren't waiting for her. She happened before you came. So she doesn't have that connection with her." I'm like, with me, I was waiting for her to come. I wanted her to come. So I've always had this connection when it's her birthday, it's Susan's birthday. Or I would go to the cemetery because back in California, we lived literally down the street from the cemetery where she was buried. So I would go there often just to visit her, just to spend time with her, which I thought it was weird and odd because my mom she wouldn't mention her. She wouldn't remember her birthday. It was always me reminding her. "Do you know what today is?" She's like, "No, Susan's birthday." I never forgot it. For whatever reason, it's always in my mind. The other, like connecting with your ancestors type of thing, I don't know how you connect with them. I know my abuelita comes around a lot because she'll come into my thoughts. Like, "Oh, my abuelita's around." And I'll just have a conversation with her just in my head. It's not like I'm actually hearing her voice, But like this weekend, I made cooked spinach the way she would cook it. I don't know if she copied the recipe from somebody else. I have no idea. But I told my son, I'm like, "This is how she would make it. So to me, this is my abuelita's recipe, and I'm just honoring her." I didn't even think Dia de los Muertos. I knew it was coming, but I didn't think related to like, this is probably why I'm doing it because it's coming, the Day of the Dead.
Wow. Oh my God, I've known you for so many years and I never knew that about your sister, your little sister. So she was before you?
No, she was after me. So I'm the oldest. I was 5 years old when she was supposed to be born, and she was born stillborn. My mom was already in the hospital about to have her, and I had a cousin that had just passed away. And that night of the hospital, my mom had a dream of that cousin holding a baby in his arms. So the next morning she woke up, she's like, "Something's wrong with the baby. She's not moving."
Oh my God.
And sure enough, she had passed. So my mom, she's always related to he came for her. Like he was holding her in his arms. Not that he like
Right.
maliciously took her, but I mean he was holding her. So she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my, it was her. It was her. That's who he was holding."
Yeah, that's actually a really common belief in Mexico that they come in threes and that the first one comes and takes the
Yeah.
next. But like you said, it's not that they're doing it on purpose. It's just that that's the way it happens, and I've seen that happen many times. It's not the way I see it, and there, I believe that people choose their death, period. And I'm sorry for your mother that she went through that, and that you as a little child probably had a lot of questions, right? Even that young. And I
Yeah.
can't imagine the pain that your mom went through with all of that, and make sense of her depression and the things that she probably went through later on. That's a very sad, sad experience to go through.
Yeah.
But the way that what happens is there's actually doctors have talked about this statistic is that especially when it comes to a person who has been the caregiver of someone who's been very sick, or when somebody dies, it's not a coincidence that less than a year later someone else dies in the family. And the reason, and especially has a lot to do with the fact that if you were a caregiver, like my mom took care of my grandma the last few years, and it was very intense and very, very hard on her because of all the things she went through. There's so much trauma there that it causes the other person to get a serious illness when that person dies in less than a year. We see people that have been caregivers also die within a year from that person dying. And it's not, I mean, in Mexico, they call it they came for them, right? It's the fact that they have so much unresolved post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not mental health disorders are always confused with PTSD and chronic PTSD. PTSD comes from generational trauma, and death is a very huge generational traumatic pattern that we don't process the grief. And when we don't process the grief, we become ill, very ill, which is why, and I'm telling you, I know people right now where they have had someone in their life die. I mean, look at all the people who have died of COVID, who have died of overdoses to the T. In less than a year, they get a very serious disease, a very serious life-threatening disease. And it's not, again, that the dead person is trying to come, although it can happen and it does happen with unresolved things. I've seen it happen. It's more of, again, the person choosing their death. Everybody chooses their death. Everybody does. Even the so-called accidents, it is chosen by that person. Why? We will never probably understand, or we will not know. Maybe in this lifetime we are, because they're gonna create technology where you can talk to the ancestors. But that's why our culture is so afraid of death, and they don't want to talk about it because it's
Could it be that the choosing of the death, could it be like, you know how we choose our parents, and we choose our parents because we know what we need in order to break those generational cycles, but I'm assuming it's also part of the plan. Like even for instance, even dealing with our parents and how they are, and sometimes how they refuse to grow, they're so set in their ways, but they also chose their life. So we can come in and they could help us break those generational cycles, even though they're mentally not okay or whatever because of how they were brought up. But it's the guy that David, the one that teaches Kabbalah, he says that a lot too, where he feels even the parents, they're supposed to be that way to help you in your journey, so you could break these generational cycles. That's how I feel like what he's trying to say. But also the death, it's part of God's plan to give you what you need in order to just kind of, even your aunts, it's part of your journey so you could break those generational cycles of being afraid of death or being afraid. She's still teaching you, you know what I mean? Even my sister, she's still in one way or another teaching us something.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's not that we choose death consciously, we choose it unconsciously. It's called depression.
Yeah.
So when people are in depression, they don't have a will to live. That's why the most dangerous disease is depression. Because unconsciously you're thinking, I don't want to live. I don't want to live. I don't want to live. Why? Because the stress of this life, which you chose your parents to play out these generational trauma patterns, is too much. So that's, you're doing it unconsciously, but that's what they call accidents. That's
Yeah.
what they call all these different things. God's will for us is not to die. God's will for us is to live. Always. God is, that problem with people is that they have this concept of God that's going to punish us. Now, you have free will in the physical body here, but you don't have free will with God because you're always going to come home. So with Jesus Christ, and this is the way Jesus Christ would heal, people would come up to him and say, heal me from this abuse I went through, heal me from this disease I have, right? And he would ask, what did you learn? Did you learn unconditional love and acceptance and surrender? And if you didn't learn, no problem. I don't judge you. I see the Christ in you, but you will learn through death, meaning I got to give you another body and you got to reincarnate to come back and learn the same lessons. That's why people, the ultimate expression of guilt is suicide, right? And we see a lot of that right now because they want to project out the guilt that they feel of what the world has done to them. And then they take their life. But you're not escaping because you're going to come back in the next body to learn the same lessons as here. And that's the whole thing. I don't like it when people, like, someone dies and they say, that was God's will. That's not God's will. We have this concept of God being this like punisher. That's our will. And even in our choosing unconsciously of death, doesn't mean we're bad or flawed. It just means we're done with this assignment. Now we're ready to go to the next assignment. And that's the whole thing about death that people are so afraid of. It's not the ending. It's the beginning. I saw this amazing movie called I Origins. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my God, it's about reincarnation. And it's about this scientist who doesn't believe in God. And of course, that's why they become scientists, so that they could prove that God is not real. So he has like this tragic experience happen to him, which only pisses him off even more because he's like, no, God is not real. Where the movie takes you through it, where literally it is proven that the person that he lost reincarnated in another body and he met the other person. And now with social media, we're all connected. We see stories of little girls waking up in India saying that they were mother to a Mexican daughter in over here. That's very, very common. Many of us remember our past lifetimes because death is energy that can, a soul can never be destroyed. It is an expression. That's why, like you said with your abuelita, talking to your abuelita, it's not like some of us can see them and some of us can hear them. But for me, it's like you, it's signs, it's the
Yeah.
smells, it's the do this, do that. I can ask my abuelita for help, my tia, my madrina Oliva, the one, the aunt that I keep telling you, and she will come to me as a bird. She will
Yes.
come to me as a feather. She will come. The problem is that we're so afraid of death that we don't engage with our ancestors who are, by the way, trying to help us, trying
Yes.
to help us, which is why when you heal yourself, you heal 7 generations before and after you, because that energy is never destroyable and they reap the benefits of that too. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. There'll be times me and my sister, unfortunately, my abuelita had her favorites. She had favorite kids and she had favorite grandkids. My sister was a favorite grandkid. I don't think when I was younger, my abuelita, and I get it, she went through her own journey in life and it was a hard life. So she wasn't very nice to me when I was a kid. She was in a bad mood. She was probably depressed, very lonely. But when she got older, I was the one that would take her to her doctor's appointments. So I was always taught you need to respect your elders. So I would see her and I would hug her and I would take her home and I say, abuelita, la quiero mucho. And she would just start crying. Like she wasn't used to that. She would just start crying. She's like, I love you too. And she was just, oh, you know. So when me and my sister speak about her, just recently, I'm not lying to you, I'm on the phone with her and then a hummingbird comes. And a hum just constantly coming around, constantly every day to my window in the kitchen. I was outside and it just came to my face and he just stood there. And I'm telling my sister, I'm like, a hummingbird is literally like stopped right in front of me, just flying in front of me. And she was like, that's my abuelita. I'm like, yeah, I know it's her. I know it's her. And she says just recently, because my sister's like Lizzie.
Mm.
She's like, my abuelita's been coming around a lot lately. We were literally speaking about her this Saturday again. But I was helping my sister move. And my sister's like, yeah, every time I would go to the parking lot, the hummingbird would come. And she keeps telling me, tell Elvirita, because my family calls, my mom's Elvira, I'm Elvira Jr., so everybody calls me Elvirita. So she's like, my abuelita keeps coming and she keeps telling me, tell Elvirita, I love her. Tell Elvirita, I love her. And I feel it's a sign of support that whatever decisions I'm making, whatever boundaries I have at this point, they're necessary. And she's supporting it. Because like I said, they come around and I do see my mom's she gets scared actually she gets terrified. And I think it's her inner child because she didn't grow up with her dad. So I think anything happens, she reverts to that little girl that feels unprotected because she didn't even have her dad there to protect her. So I think she just reverts to like, oh my God, she gets terrified.
Yeah.
But I have a story where I have one of my girlfriends, she just randomly calls me and she's like, I got us tickets to go see this medium. We're going on Friday. And it's literally like a Tuesday. And I'm like, wait, what? You're barely telling me right now. Like, what do you mean? She's like, yes, we're going on Friday. So I get all excited. Last minute, she's like, I can't go with you. I'm going to go volunteer in Mexico, blah, blah, blah. But you go with so and so. At the last minute, I ended up going by myself.
Wow.
So I was like, fine. So I go, I'm like, I feel bad. She bought the ticket. Let me just go. So I'm she's just talking and she starts randomly bringing people up. Whoever can relate to that person, she'll speak to you. So it's a room of, let's say, 30 people. And I'm calling my grandfather, my mom's dad. He never came through, but one of my cousins that passed away came through. And she's like, I'm picking up a Richard. And I'm like, I'm scared. Like, what you talking about? So I'm like, me? And she's like, she starts telling me all these things that he still comes around to grandma's house, that he liked eating this fruit that grandma had on the porch, something about under the bridge. Everything she was telling me, I wasn't very close to him, so I couldn't relate. So I was like, okay, so I wrote everything down in notes. I called his brother the next day and I let him know what had happened. I said, look, I don't know, maybe you could give me answers. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. By pure coincidence, the next day was my niece's quinceañera. And I didn't know, but one of my cousins came that was very close to him. I didn't know she was coming. So I tell her what had happened and she starts crying. Just like, yeah, we used to get together because she grew up with him. So she's like, we used to get together as teenagers. We would go under the bridge because the freeway's right there, the underpass. We would go under the bridge by the freeway and we'd hang out over there. I'm like, really? And she's like, yes. And he used to like eating those fruits. Remember the tree and the porch in grandma's house? I'm like, yeah. It always had this fruit and he would always love eating it. Everything that this lady medium told me, she confirmed it. And I was like, okay. So the medium was telling us that, like I said, you could believe or you cannot believe. It's kind of hard not to believe because I didn't know anything what she was telling me, but my cousin confirmed it. She says that when we all pass, when they get to the other side, they don't care about the problems. They don't care about, I didn't speak to so and so. They don't care about any of that. Everybody's together. Everybody's forgiving everybody. Everything's fine. But I do feel they're around.
Yeah.
To guide us for sure, because I think they do want us to break certain cycles and to heal because they're part of our lineage for a reason and they love us to some, they want us to be better and probably heal stuff that they couldn't heal.
Right. Yes, I agree with you 1,000%. That's an amazing story, by the way. And I believe that some of you, like you, my sister Lizzie, your sister, you're tapped into these gifts, maybe them more than us. I know Lizzie is like that, and your sister sounds exactly like her. My youngest sister, She's very, and an incident just happened last week, which is insane, which she had a dream that when she was pregnant with her son, she had a dream of this guy that was basically holding the baby too, like kind of just being around the baby. And she didn't know that her mother-in-law, there had been a nephew who had transitioned. And later on, she found out through something. And then last week, she went to go meet some of that side of the family. She meets the sister of the brother who had transitioned, and my sister notices a tattoo on her shoulder. And the tattoo says 7222. And my sister's like, what does that mean? Because that's my son's birthday. And the she's like, that's my angel number because that's my brother's number. That's the one that he was born on the day that this guy who died, that was his angel number, and she didn't even know, and she saw him in her dreams. This is very common for her. That's the reason I'm bringing this up, is because I feel like a lot of us have these gifts and powers to do this, and then we think we're crazy. We
Yeah.
think we think something's wrong with us. And I know from my upbringing, my mom just, she was afraid, so she didn't want to talk to us about it. And I believe she has very big psychic powers, but she doesn't want to admit it. She has a very big connection to the spiritual world. She literally was someone who would tell me as a mom, and I know a lot of moms say this, cuando tú ya vas, yo ya vengo. You know how that
Yes.
saying goes? But she really did. Like, I swear, I couldn't even think about what I was gonna go do because she already knew. So for her, and maybe for your mom, the depression, and for a lot of people that have these gifts and powers, the depression is, and they feel that they're crazy. They feel like there's something wrong with them. They feel that, they can't talk about these things. Because I had another client, for example, who still can tell. Her biggest trauma came because she knows when someone's going to die, and she knows and she sees that. So she thought that she was creating this. She saw when her husband was going to transition, and she saw everything. So she thought she caused it. So we
Oh,
had to do a lot of generational healing around that. Now she's an incredible, vibrant. I mean, this woman came to me and she was like, she couldn't even look up. She was so traumatized with everything that had happened to her in her life. And now, after Kundalini Yoga, after 8 weeks, because we did a one-on-one coaching, I couldn't even recognize her. She came in dressed beautifully, her face lifted. I mean, it was like a whole new woman, because it was the guilt that she carried and the fear of the gifts that she was given that made her feel afraid, again, because she grew up with parents that made this seem weird. And it's not because our parents are evil. It's just because a lot of it does come from the church, Catholicism, where people misinterpret what the Bible says sometimes about, you're not supposed to talk to the dead, or you're not supposed to talk to the spirit. I'm sorry, but if we don't have a relationship with our ancestors, this is what our indigenous people got right, then we will never be able to heal. It's the fact that we're still angry at the people that died that keeps the generational pattern going and going, as bad as it was. I had a woman yesterday, I was posting a video on TikTok about abandonment wounds. And her story, what she told me, generational pattern, was horrific, horrific. What her dad and her mom, and then she tells me that they've already transitioned, that they're dead. So I had to send her a separate message, because even if your parents are dead and they were abusive towards you, you still have to do the work of forgiveness and healing, because that's why you chose them, like you said. And we're so afraid of this death world, when we can actually start to not only honor our gifts, but know that we can still release these ancestors and future generations by us healing ourselves.
you just answered my question.
I did? What was it?
I have my mom's dad. We've never put up his picture because he just left. He abandoned my abuelita. He abandoned all his kids. He didn't care. And I know I have aunts that are still very upset. They won't even say my father to that man, the man, you know? So I was going to ask you, should I put his picture up or not? Because he's been coming through a lot. When I've been doing the sessions with the nurse about Dr. Gabor Mate, sitting with your emotions, you scan our body. She's like, okay, close your eyes and just scan your body. What are you feeling? And I kept feeling the frownness in my forehead right here. the frown is in my forehead. She's like, you know, I started thinking, like, why am I feeling this frowness in my forehead? And I realized it was him that was coming through because the only picture that we have of him, he's just, it's just a picture of his face. And he had this forehead. It's like this, you
Yeah.
know, really strong forehead where he looks upset or angry. I don't know if that's how he just looked all the time. Or he just, he was like that all the time. I have no idea. But you just answered my question right now. I need to put his picture up and I need to have a long conversation.
Yeah, and it's been so much healing to your lineage. And that, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the altars. Okay. So that the altar is a place where we set up the pictures of our deceased. And it's so interesting you say that because my husband's grandmother was very looked at as a very bad woman, right? She never loved anyone. She never said anything. And I was like, that's the first one we need to put on there. Exactly. And the reason that I had heard that was because I think it was Ramdas, the teacher, who said that the people that triggered him the most, he would put them on their altar. And that's the whole thing about generational healing. I know. And we're not telling you that if somebody abused you, that you need to put them on your altar or anything like that. That's up to you to decide. But the whole thing is that we could still do the energy work. It's the same thing that that girl was telling me on TikTok. It may not mean putting the person on the altar, but it may mean you asking God to relieve you from this resentment, from this grievance. The holistic way is what we're doing with Kundalini yoga, right? Rewiring the nervous system, because none of us have mental health disorders. We have nervous system disorders. None of us do. That's what this is. It's chronic stress. Our parents have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. And we can change that by regulating our nervous systems through meditation and ultimately through these, what a course teaches us of forgiveness, right? It's not easy and it's not something that it happens overnight, but I know that we're not alone and I know that we can ask God for help. And even the things that I'm talking about now, just because I took that class of death doesn't mean that I don't get afraid about death. Not at all. It still comes up, I think, more and more now. But before, it used to be paralyzing for me. Paralyzing my own death of what will happen to my children or my parents. And I think a lot of people live that way where they're so paralyzed, not realizing that first and foremost, I mean, I've experienced death in Mother Ayahuasca, and the way it's explained scientifically is DMT gets secreted out of your prefrontal cortex. So it's like you said, it's the flashes that are shown to you. In all the near-death experiences, the ancestors are there waiting for you for a reason. But if you're in a DMT trip, it's the most beautiful experience. That's why you hear a lot of people say, oh, the light. Oh, how beautiful. No one hears when they're in that precipice, they're not like afraid. They're not crying to go back because that's not what God is. So it is a beautiful experience. It's a psychedelic experience. It's amazing. But yet we can still from the physical create a big impact on what happens with the lineage by simply just forgiving. There was a situation in Dr. Joe Dispenza. He does meditation. You know who he is, right? The teacher of that, where they went to do a meditation for all day, and the woman's mother came to her in the meditation, and she was able to forgive her in the meditation. Her diabetes went away. She had some other real life-threatening disease. Just from her forgiving in meditation, all of it went away. So that's
Wow.
this is so, so important. And for us to not necessarily have to remember everything that our ancestors did, but like you right now, you received a sign, a message, right? Like so many
Yeah.
of us that can do that. Do you currently have like an altar or do you practice in any of that?
I do put up the altar. Like I have my picture, my frames, and I put it up and I take it down. So I have the pictures of family members who have transcended, but I've never put up my grandfather. I don't even call him my grandfather. I'm calling him my grandfather right now because I feel he didn't deserve the title. So I would always call him by his name, Santiago. And when I speak about him, Santiago, Santiago, Santiago. Like I try not to even say mi abuelito, mi abuelo. Like he didn't deserve that title. I've always said that, but I think I need to have a long conversation. I've had conversations with him before, but I think I need to sit down again with him.
It's like the movie Encanto or Coco, not forgiving those people that are the black sheep. Same thing with
Yeah.
my grandpa, because my grandma was mad at my grandpa the whole time because, the way he died, it was because of another woman and the cheating and all that. You know what happened when grandma died? I put them both on the same frame. I got my grandpa's picture and grandma, they're going together. So now she's stuck with him because a lot of people want to just reject that part of ourselves. And again, our ancestors made a lot of mistakes, just the way we make mistakes, right? And there's, yes, I get it. There could be a lot of extremes in the things that they did, like abandonment or cheating and leaving your family and all of that. But we are the cycle breakers. And that's the whole thing about this week or this celebration. It's like we understand that you were acting out of your pain. But now, because of that, we're not going to live in shame and in guilt as a lineage, because that's what happens when we don't honor them because we think that they're these bad human beings. Like, who are we to judge, right? Like, throw that first rock. If any of us have never had any mistakes, okay, then you can look at them in that way. But I think all of us have made a lot of mistakes that if God came to you and said, you will be released from this pain if you allow me to help you to forgive, I think all of us would do it.
Yeah, and that's where I struggle is I can understand why a person is the way they is, their upbringing, everything. Where I struggle is to still be around them
Mhm.
and not because they continue to be who they are, honestly, and not let it affect me. That's where I'm still struggling in, that I need to have certain boundaries where certain people don't understand. I have family telling me like you should forgive. I do forgive and I do understand why this person is the way they is and why they're acting out the way they do. I'm still working on the not letting it affect me. Like my arm starts hurting, my shoulder, my face, I start getting a migraine. I'm still working on it. And that's
Right.
why I think I struggle in my head where I still tell myself, it's okay. At least you're
Right.
working on it. At least
Yeah.
you're trying. At least you're praying to God to help you overcome this. That's where I
Yeah.
struggle with.
And it's a totally valid. I mean, I think we all struggle with that completely, especially our culture where we're told we have to just, like we talked about with the guilt episode, like we have to just accept our parents and take it how it is. That is so toxic, so toxic. A big part of the healing journey is that you actually create those boundaries, that you actually stop abandoning yourself, because that's why our bodies act up that way, because they're like, dude, you're betraying yourself again. You're
Yeah.
doing it again. So sometimes our soul's hardest work is to be like, I love you, but I love you from a distance. I pray for you, but I pray for you from a distance because, again, I truly do believe that 7 generations before and after us heal, but sometimes we don't get to see that until the afterworld. Like with my grandmother, when I began my healing journey, towards the end, I could see that my grandma had actually healed because she told my mom, I love you, which is something she had never told her before. And she wasn't like this with everyone else, but with my mom, there was healing in their relationship. And even afterwards, because my mom, going back to the same thing, when my grandma died, she got really sick because she was taking care of her. She almost died, literally. And grandma was there. She came from the ethers, and mom's like, she's trying to take me with her. She's trying to take me with her.
Pobrecita.
Mom, she's not trying to take you with you, even though I believed it at one point. I was like, Grandma, you better stay over there.
Yeah. You're like, hey, no, no.
Like I'm all tough, but then I'm like, "What?" But it's more of like this whole, that just shows you how much she's protecting you even from the ethers, right? Like she actually cares, mom. So it just shows you how much she has loved you. She just could never express it because of her own pain that she went through. So there's a lot that I feel is taboo around this subject, which is why people get really upset and freaked out. And now I leave my altar on all year and I walk by it because it's in my hallway. I walk by it and every day. And at first, it used to like trigger me because I have people there that died very young too. That I was like, why, God? Like, they would give me my own fear. Like, look at that. You say you choose your own death. Why? You're so young. You had your whole life ahead of you. What is going on? But that has helped me really face my own fears about it. and it has helped me really bring more peace and equanimity. And I feel like this work, I don't know about you, but it helps us prepare for the inevitable that people are going to transition, are going to, and some of these stuffs you can't even plan. I mean, in the last year, people that I never thought would transition are not here anymore. And they're not older. They're in their 40s. And from the real estate market, I've seen many transition from my own teacher, my own
Yeah.
Kundalini yoga teacher. That messed me up for like a year because I was like, what? Like, God, you said that if I practice this work, and I'm just kidding. So that messed me up. So I'm not trying to say like I don't go through those emotions anymore or anything like that. It's just that I try to really stay as much discipline as committed to making sure that I face those fears, which is why I keep the altar up the entire year. So let's talk about the actual traditions about Dia de los Muertos, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people might get wrong. I actually didn't even know, but there's like did you know that every day is very meaningful, like starting on the 20th?
Really? No, I did not.
I didn't know either until I finally went back to Mexico and I started to see the traditions and the rituals. But for example, on the 27th, they actually turn on the first white candle, and everything is symbolic because the candles mean something. The flores, they call them the how do you say it? Sipalchulchi. I don't want to mess it up.
I
Those
know. The little orange ones, yeah.
Yes. All of it is very symbolic. So the actual celebration starts October 27th, where they honor pets. Isn't that cool? Like
Mhm.
animals.
I can honestly see that because I've had cats, dogs, but the way I love my little baby Eva, I'm like, she's like my grandbaby. I'm not lying to you. She's, it's like I gave birth to her. It's just crazy how much I love that little dog. That me and Omar are grandma and grandpa. Ve ya con tu grandpa, and it's like, oh, go to grandma, and then she'll feed you, and it goes back and forth. It's the cutest thing. I could see it now. I could see why you honor those. They're like little angels
Hmm?
that come and bring so much joy to our lives. I really feel that now. I didn't know about that because I didn't grow up with like dogs and stuff.
Yeah, me too. My mom hated dogs.
I'm all terrified of dogs.
Then my husband loves dogs, so then we always had to have a dog around him or anything. Like I never had a cat. They say cat. Actually, we did have a cat when we first got together. Then he died suddenly too. But they're very like mystical. Like they're
Oh
on.
yes, yes. At this point, I have it's insane. I have what 6 cats, but they're all outside because I'm allergic to them. But the original first one that came to me, she reminds me a lot of my abuelita now because she's older, and for whatever reason, she'll sit on the stoop and we're going out to run an errand or something, and she just sits there and she has this look in her face that I'm like, the same look my abuelita used to give us, like, ahí van otra vez a la calle. Like this look like, okay, where are you guys going now? Just going around. And she wouldn't go out. She would just stay home. She didn't drive or anything. So, but she has that same energy look. She's just looking like, okay, off again to do your thing.
I think that does happen too, that we definitely get sent. They reincarnate or they come as the spirit of an animal or something that is protecting us. I feel that we all do have one guardian angel, but it does change with time. Like mine has changed now that I'm more conscious about it. It was always my tia, my madrina Oliva, who died when I was 8 years old. But towards my adult life, it became others that I didn't even know in physical life, like my grandmother's father, who was a very spiritual man. I would even consider him to be enlightened. He was such a very, very humble, beautiful, noble man. I didn't know anything about him, and I started sensing him, these stories would come up. And then when my grandma was still alive, I asked her, who is this person? And then she ended up telling me that it was my grandfather, her or great grandfather, her father. So I think that they do change, but I do believe that we do have like a standard guardian angel. We have 40 angels that protect us all the time, but there's like one ancestor that does come to help you. And I think that why when we move through our healing journey based on what we're going through, like what you were saying, like what I'm going through right now, there's a specific ancestor that's there to help you because that's something that they went through too. And that's where we can make that connection. And if you do have your grandparents alive, my God, it's a blessing because you can ask a lot of questions. You don't have your grandparents alive either, right?
No, none of them. But they all had, 3 of them had very long lives. My grandfather was short a month of turning 100. My abuelita, I believe she was 95, and my Emma she was in her 90s too. I'm not sure if she's 96, 97, 98, around there. Santiago, my other abuelo, he died young. I'm not sure if he was in his 40s, 50s, or somewhere, but he was young. He was the only one that died young.
And how did you get a picture of him?
The family has him. The
Okay, so
family, but it's just that with the frown. He has
yeah.
the forehead.
And if you, by the way, if we don't have pictures of your ancestors, you could still pray to them. Like you don't have to have one,
Well,
but
I
that,
put little angels because I don't have my little sister, so I have a little angel
there you go.
that represents her.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. I'm sure she's a big guardian angel.
Oh, she definitely is.
I'll have to ask you some other questions about that because did you name your daughter after her or no?
Close. Susan, my sister Susan. So I didn't want to name Suzette Susan, so I went with Suzette. But it's in reference to Susan, yeah.
I just get the feeling that she's Suzette's guardian angel.
Mm.
I get that feeling that I feel like Suzette has a lot of psychic powers.
She does. Pobrecita, she's trying to figure it out. It becomes very overwhelming to her. And I think she doesn't know what to do with it. So she's trying to figure it out. But she's extremely sensitive. So she's still trying to figure it out. But she definitely does have it. She
I
does.
can tell that. And Susan, I feel
Susan.
like is helping her a lot with that. So call upon her. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, I will.
So the 27th is the pets, and then so they put offerings out for them as well. The 28th is remembering those who died tragically. So those who passed away like car accidents, violence, things of that nature. They lay out candles and white flowers, particularly for those people. Then on the 29th, they follow the forgotten souls, and this is your grandpa, your grandpa.
Yeah.
That's today's the 28th. Well, 29th would be a great day for you to light a white candle for him and to break these curses. And then we have on the 30th the souls of children who passed before baptism. So it's a little bit different because the first is Dia de los Angelitos, which is Day of the Little Angels. So it's the souls of the children, even if they've had baptism or not. So it's basically any child, but particularly on the 30th, it's those that died without the baptism, because in Catholic religion, dying without
The
baptism,
30th. Oh no, the 30th. Yeah, yeah.
the 30th. And then the first is the souls in purgatory. In Mexican Catholicism, this is the day for those who are still on a journey towards spiritual peace. And the one thing that I could tell you about purgatory, and let me know if this resonates at all with what you've experienced, is basically it's not that they get stuck. We make them stuck. So I have a cousin who her mother died of cancer almost 10 years ago. This cousin still cries every day. Every day. Every day she tells God, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Her life has been complete shambles since her mother died. Her husband died. I mean, a lot of different things. Her ex-husband died. A lot of things have happened. When you are not at peace with someone transitioning, it's like the soul, or not the soul, because the soul she's already on her next assignment, but it's the expression of her stays in this place. It's not that she's being judged, but it's just that she's not being let go to her next assignment. So it's not that the purgatory, I think what Catholics think is that they did something really bad. So now they're
Yeah,
stuck, they're stuck in hell. There's no such thing as hell. We're living in hell in this physical body. Okay. This is heaven on earth. How to do that, right?
yes,
We
yes.
create hell. So, and it's so sad because we have a little tia in Mexico and she's in her 90s, right? And this little woman, she's a Catholic, goes to church, all this stuff, but she doesn't want to die because she's so afraid of purgatory. And I'm like, Mom, first of all, what did she do?
I know. I was thinking,
Exactly.
what did she do?
And second of all, it's this whole thing about Catholicism that makes us so afraid that, again, they tell us God is this judgmental God. You get to the heavens of gate, and God's going to say, you didn't do this right. You didn't do this right. So now you got to go spend time in hell.
Again, since a baby, like we talked the other day, since a baby's a baby, You have to baptize them to relieve them of all their sin. They're babies. What do you mean? So yeah, all along, you're sinners, por mi culpa, por mi gran culpa. You know, it's so sad. It shouldn't be that way.
And I got this
But
little,
I do feel we need to try, obviously, and do better and not be walking around, be like, oh, I could just confess, you know?
well, no, because I've
That's
seen the people that have not done their grieving work, or like if you haven't done forgiveness work, their deaths are not easy. The last few minutes, it's not easy at all. The more, that's why the great sages or like a great atone master like Yogananda, or my cousin's grandfather, he died, just took his last breath, and that was it. That was it. Nothing traumatic, no illness, nothing like that. Why? Because he was a sage. And why was he a sage? I told my mom, tell me about this guy. Never stressed out, never angry at anyone. I think one of his daughters even like took all his inheritance or something. Didn't care. He's like, you do, boo boo. He was just always in the Christ consciousness. So of course he lived to be like 98. And then the day that he was ready to go, he just took his last breath. That was it. So this should encourage us to to do this work.
Abuelito was. He was like a cool cat. He was just so chill, calm. And he would always say, the one that
Wow.
gets mad is the one that's going to lose. Be like, okay. So much to learn from him, honestly. Yeah. From
That
our
was,
ancestors, you know?
that was your dad's dad?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I wonder your
And,
dad's.
and no, and my dad, he could, once he gets mad, he gets mad. But he's usually very calm. He was all his life was very chill, calm. Omar's the same way. But once they get mad, you're like, don't piss him off anymore, which is rare. So I don't know if my abuelito was like that, but that was his saying.
That's a beautiful saying. You need to teach us how you did it,
Yeah,
right?
I know. He needs to come back.
Exactly. Oh, he can still teach us actually from there, right? And
Yeah.
that's
That's
true.
what I meant. He needs to come back and just let us know and explain it.
Real quick. Exactly. So then we have the 31st is the Souls in the Purgatory, which is Halloween. And interesting enough, there's a lot of history
That
behind.
makes sense.
Yeah, Halloween. And I stopped celebrating Halloween like maybe 4 years ago just because of the how it's used. It's used. I mean, the way I used to do it, what was it? It was just dressing up as something demonic to drink a lot of alcohol and to just go wild on it. It's like a permission slip for people to just be completely in their dark that day. So I was like, no more participating in that.
The thing that I still give out candy. I won't decorate anymore, but I do give out candy because there's these little kids.
Okay.
I'm like, I just want to give you a candy and give you a good vibe and just make it about something else. You know what I mean? Not about dressing demonic or evil or nothing like that. Just more on a peaceful side. And I don't know. I just like seeing the kids or come out and
Yeah, no, I agree with you 1,000%. I went to church on Sunday and it's like a spiritual center, Unity of Phoenix. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's Christian teachings. I would say they read from the Bible, but it's also very like not from the Bible. It's very open-minded. They teach A Course in Miracles there. They teach they've brought like meditation teachers and stuff like that. And they had like a trick or trunk for the kids there. And first of all, going there, I was like, the power of community is so important. Like, this is why churches are so important and spiritual centers. And again, you don't want to take that away from the kids. They were having a blast. To them, they're not like, they don't understand
yeah.
and I would never want to take that. Halloween used to be like my favorite holiday growing up as a child. So I don't want to ruin it for them. I pass out candy all the time too, and things of that nature. I just don't participate in that. What I will like this week, for example, depending if we end up going to Mexico or not, which I won't even know till tomorrow or the next day. I usually start getting my ofrenda ready, which is my altar. I always have it up all week, but on the 31st, which is Halloween, that's where I started to get I decorate it even more, where I bring in natural flowers. Throughout the year, I have like vases, but this time like we really go all out. And then the 31st we get it ready. The first I don't do anything. The second is when I actually bring the ofrenda. So that's when we bring I do personally the fruits, what they liked. One of my uncles loved to smoke cigarettes, the tequila, the foods that they loved. We go get a pan de los muertos. And that day I do go all out. And typically I invite all my family to come as well. But this year my parents are in Mexico. Everyone's all over the place. I'll still follow that tradition because for me, it's something that I've done now since 2018, and that just feels good. The
Yeah.
actual day of El Dia de los Muertos is November 2nd, which people sometimes get wrong with the first, but that's the day where in Mexico, now you're adorned with the marigolds and the candles and the incense. And when I was there in San Miguel de Allende, I mean, it was in San Miguel de Allende, you had people from all over the world there. There were people there from China, from Europe. I mean, it was from everywhere. So it felt very universal. I was like, it's not just us Mexican people.
Right.
But now in Pátzcuaro, that's like the roots of where I really want to go. This year, if I'm able to, who knows? I've let it out to the universe. But that's where the Purepecha people came, and that's the indigenous people where we come from. A large part of our DNA is from there. And there it's so beautiful. I mean, they start on the 30th, on the 27th, and the way they decorate the cemeteries, they actually spend the night in the cemetery. And I would totally do that, but I was like, if I spend the night at this cemetery with these people, they're gonna be like, where's your family? Why are you here? My cemetery, I don't know about your cemetery in your rancho, but my cemetery in El Rancho de Nosotros, it's scary. Like one of the things that we want to do, my son, when we went to go bury my grandmother, my youngest literally spent like the whole hour we were there picking up trash because people just,
Oh,
yeah, it was not a good situation. And that's one of the things that I would love to do, go back to my rancho and to actually clean up the whole cemetery, clean up everything because people go there and then there's trash, they drink, they do all this different stuff, and I get it, but I don't think I would spend the night in my rancho cemetery.
I don't know where my abuelita is actually here. Mi abuelo Santiago, I don't know where he's at actually. He's somewhere in Mexico. I don't even know if my mom knows where he's at. My grandfather, I haven't gone to Guadalajara, but I know my grandfather's there and my grandma's in California. But where Omar's from, I've never been to their cemetery, but I don't think I would want to go either just because my father-in-law, he's still alive, but he already paid to dig the hole for when he dies and it's already open. So I don't know, I'm assuming they put like wood over it so nobody falls in it. But he already paid to dug it up and be ready. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like what? The hole's ready, like dug up and everything. They're like, yeah. I don't understand that. I don't understand that, but that's fine. That's how he feels. That's what he needs to do. Then that's what he needs to do. So I don't think I would want to be there at night and fall into a hole or something.
I think a lot of people are just, my mom is very afraid of the cemetery. She doesn't go at all, at all. And my dad does. So right now when they're in Mexico, my dad has already gone and take all the flowers and everything, but my mom,
Oh,
she just can't. It really brings her a lot of just a lot of
sadness.
yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. One of the traditions that we do in Mexico on February 2nd, we have La Fiesta de la Candelaria. And one of the things we do on the day of February 2nd is we wake up in the morning, like at 3:30, 4 in the morning, and we do this walk to the cemetery. And then we take the banda and La Virgen and all of that. And that was beautiful, but I wouldn't do it alone. I need a crowd around me. I want to do it. We're tough until it actually comes down to it. Ah. That's why God, I think, never gave me that gift of being able to see like the mediums because I would freak the hell out.
Yeah.
Like, no, thank you. De por sí, like sometimes when the hummingbirds come or something happens like that, I'm like, like,
Who's here?
what I have found through generational healing is a lot more peace with the process of death, with even like I said, the ancestors that everybody used to hate now being able to like put them on the altar and to honor them and to basically just know that they're there to assist us if we needed it, if we needed the help. So I guess those are the traditions. Those are the days that happen. That's why they put out the marigolds. The marigolds are basically like the color where they believe our ancestors believe that through these marigolds that they ancestors that have transitioned can see that and they could see it as like a pathway that's illuminated. And that's why they go to the cemeteries and in San Miguel de Allende they brought the flowers all the way from the cemetery all the way to the middle of the town. And then the day of the Dia de los Muertos, it's a big party. So it's like banda, comida, everybody's basically celebrating. And it was so bizarre because I was happy, but I was crying all day.
You're
It was,
celebrating a life that's no longer here and you're celebrating who they were to you. I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful tradition that we lost somewhere along, many of us lost somewhere along the way, that I really feel we need to bring it back. And I think honestly, even other people that don't have this tradition, I feel to some extent they like it, even when they saw it in the movie Coco, that they might even be doing them themselves. Like, why wouldn't you honor your ancestors?
yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you, in San Miguel de Allende, there were people there from all over the world,
Yeah.
all over the world. And I had a recent realtor reach out to me. She's like, I'm going to Dia de los Muertos. I've never been. I saw you go to that. What do I do? I'm like, this is what you need to do, especially if you're going to San Miguel de Allende. Which, by the way, if you are going to San Miguel de Allende or Mexico for these things, you have to get your Airbnb way in advance. Right now, Pátzcuaro, that's the hard part. That in Pátzcuaro, there's no Airbnbs left, none, because everybody goes there. The closest place you can stay is in Morelia, in Pátzcuaro, and it's about 30 minutes from there. And there are still some hotels, but even in Morelia, it's a huge deal. Everywhere in Mexico, they've been preparing for all week. So if you all get a chance, you need to do it, and you need to do it with your kids, because the kids that really brought us so close, and it helped us talk about things that we really were afraid to even talk about.
Yeah.
So, how do we want to close this out? What would you say to give tips for anyone that has never celebrated, or perhaps is curious but maybe has been afraid? I mean, is there anything that you would recommend that they do this week?
Simple, just a picture.
Yeah,
Sometimes I would just put the picture and then throughout the year, I need to start buying frames just so I could put their pictures, put them up, just to acknowledge that they're part of your lineage and learn from their good things that they taught us and the bad things, because when they teach us the bad things or mistakes that they have made, they're teaching us what not to do, to do
that's
better. So why not learn from that and honor what they taught us?
I agree 1,000%. We have to tell a new narrative. We have to tell a new story. And maybe our parents and their pain blocks them from the ability of forgiving who hurt them, right? But here we are, this next generation that can maybe take this on to help free not just our parents, but free ourselves,
Yes.
because things absolutely still affect us. So I would say the same thing. You don't have to get fancy with your altars. Like I said, I just started my altar in 2018, and since then it's become more elaborate, but it doesn't have to be difficult. If you can find pictures, fantastic. And putting them up, white candles are very representative of the afterlife and of healing. Keeping the candle on, and maybe just like I said, coming together with your family on November 2nd and being able to have a conversation about the ancestors, about the past, and about death, and how it's not something that any of us need to be afraid of, that it's part of the human experience and a new beginning for people to actually begin anew. So hopefully we will get to a point, and I think we are in 10 years or less, where scientists will have figured out that what death is, for us to understand it better, so that more of us could stop being afraid of it. And from what I hear, there is technology that it's already coming down the pipeline about us being able to speak to the afterlife and the ancestors, which the mediums already do.
Yes. Yes.
So honor your gifts, honor your ancestors, honor your traditions, remember where you came from. Remember also that taking on new traditions like Kundalini yoga, you might be surprised, because, like I said, I have found that those same meditations were the same ones that Jesus Christ was teaching in the caves. It was the same ones that the Mayans were meditating under. So ultimately, we're all connected. We all come from the same expression of God. We're all created equal. And if we can all really learn to embrace our own inner power and Satnam, then we will give others permission to do that as well. And life will become a lot easier. Any last words before we close out?
No, no, just being light, I guess, all week, the rest of the week, and light and love and forgiveness.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Elvira, so much. This has been such a wonderful time together. I think I got a lot of aha moments. We're gonna have to talk about this afterwards. But thank you for taking on this subject. I know that it's not necessarily the easiest, especially when we are a society that is going through collective grief. So our heart goes out to each and every one of you as you move through this week and as you move through the remembrance of any of your loved ones that have transitioned. As we do close out today's episode, may we all feel the presence of our loved ones, and may we remember that they're never truly gone, that they live in our hearts, in our wisdom, and in the choices that we make to heal. So let's continue to honor their spirits, not just once a year, but in our daily lives as we carry forward their stories, their strengths, and their hopes for all of us. So thank you all for joining us on this beautiful journey of renewal, of remembering. Until next time, may you walk in the light of those who came before you, and may their love guide you to a place of true sovereignty and healing. We're sending you all so much love and gratitude from the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. Thank you, everyone. Satnam.